This is the first time I'm in Spain. This may have been said before. This is my 52nd country that I've been in, so it's amazing that Spain and you actually have to thank a football player who plays for FC Barcelona, because on Twitter, I'm avid football follower. On Twitter, I always make bets, and a lot of my friends are architects, some from Spain, some from the Netherlands. I said, okay, whoever wins the World Cup, I will speak in a city in their country next time I come to Europe. So, you know, you have to thank David Villa for winning the World Cup. Otherwise, I would be in the Netherlands right now. So, that being said, I'm going to talk about Architecture for Humanity, some projects, and maybe most interesting for some of you is what's happening in Haiti and their reconstruction. So, Architecture for Humanity is an organization that allows architects and engineers to get involved in humanitarian projects to help people in need. The most important thing is it's not just about designing solutions for people in need, it's about building things for people in need. Because, you know, there are a million ideas out there that can change the world, but unless you build it, it doesn't matter. So when you're dealing in crisis, you're dealing with areas of vast poverty, it's actually much worse for an architect to show up, present an idea, and not to implement that idea. Because what you've done is you've shown people a vision, but you haven't given them a future. So for us, when we commit to communities, we make sure that we build in those communities. We're not only looking at basic structures, but we're looking at how do we reimagine the future. And so we experiment sometimes from crazy projects. This is the Plastiki, which is a 60-foot catamaran made out of 12,000 plastic bottles, PET bottles, like this. We were very fortunate to have somebody who asked us to work on it because we could experiment with new technologies. And Nathaniel, who's here, was the architect on that. And yes, it made it from San Francisco to Sydney all by itself. But we also, why we did that is we helped a team invent a new material, which is to take plastic bottles and make them structurally reinforced, which means you can now take a Coke bottle and turn it into a structural element that you can use in building. To the other side of the world, where we're working with small weaving cooperatives, in this instance, women who had lost their husbands after the tsunami, and using a stabilized soil block system to create weaving centers for less than €1,000. So the idea is how do we build low-cost buildings so that they can create economic engines? I'm going to have to go over here because this is the worst clicker in the world. But the thing is, it's not just about the building. The building is a vessel. The vessel is to create social and economic change. So the number one priority is shelter, but number two is jobs. How can we create jobs locally and how can we create an economic engine? So this is me. I grew up in a tough neighborhood of South London. It's the place where we invented the term hooligan, and we practiced it every day. And I was inspired to become an architect. As you can see, this is the first time in Spain, so I don't get to see beautiful architecture. I grew up with bad architecture. And I became an architect because I didn't think that this should be the community swimming pool and this should not be the community center. So, you know, there had to be a way. And so, like many people who are inspired to become an architect, I went to architecture school, and I thought they were going to teach me to help create environments to improve people's lives, and that's not what they taught me. They taught me to make big fancy buildings for people who could afford it. And so there's two things that happen when you realize that you've entered the wrong profession. One, you just assimilate and you start making opera houses. Or two, you rebel and you become really stubborn. And so I became really stubborn, and every time they gave me a project, I would insert in a social aspect to it. So they told me to design a museum, I would add a homeless shelter to it, you know, and it just really annoy the professors. But, you know, as I graduated and they finally got me out of school, I realized that social value in architecture was vital, and if I wanted to do this as a career, that I needed to infuse it in my work. And then I started working for architecture firms, and that's not what we were doing. So as Gio mentioned, I started, co-founded the organization with Kate Storr as a project on the weekends, just to feel good. It's like my first night in Barcelona. We went out for dinner, beautiful dinner, great architecture. We opened the door, and there's 2 homeless people sleeping right there. And so in my mind, the way I think is not, this was a great meal. This was like, Barcelona also has some issues that they need to tackle. So the idea is this is a way we could do. So fast forward 12 years, the organization has now done over 355 projects in 42 countries. And we've created shelter and schools and health clinics for approximately 1.5 million people. This year, in 2011, we're going to be working in 18, sorry, they keep growing. And we get requests almost every day to help. And we do post-disaster reconstruction programs. The thing that's vital to understand about working in a disaster is we're not there for the glory. We're not there for 2 weeks. You have to commit to at least 1 year to 4 years in a post-disaster situation. Long after the media has gone, long after anyone cares about Haiti, Chile, Pakistan, you have to stay and help rebuild. So when we commit to Haiti or Pakistan, we say we're going to be there for at least 4 years, and that we will commit to having architects and engineers support communities in that effort. To give you an idea, after Katrina, the press media usually print these 5 pictures of houses we did. These are low-income houses for about 90,000 euros, 3-bedroom homes for families. But by having an office on the Gulf Coast and working with families, we were able to build about 722 houses. So right now, for post-disaster work, we are currently set up in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. We have a small project in Talca in Chile, and we are in Pakistan up in the Swat Valley. We have local chapters as well. So my office, I have an office of 12 people in San Francisco, and then I have small offices in Port-au-Prince and in Cape Town, and we have about 50 architects that work for me. But beyond that, I started getting phone calls from people saying, hey, I'd like to get involved in your projects, but I live in Detroit, and we have really serious issues in Detroit, and I would like architects to focus on that. Could you come to our city and help set up an organization to rebuild Detroit? But what they didn't know, that it was just me and my laptop. So for the first 6 years, it was just me, my laptop, and my cell phone. And so because it was on the internet, everyone thought it was a massive NGO, but it wasn't. So, rather than saying, no, we can't help, we realized that architects like to do a couple of things. Architects like to talk, architects like to drink, and architects like to talk. So we started something called Drinking for Humanity. And what it means, this may be very popular in Barcelona, is you meet in a bar the first Tuesday of the month, and everyone sits down with the idea of trying to tackle some local issues. And your first drink, whether it's, you're having a beer or a whiskey or a Coke, whatever the cost of that is, you put that money in the center of the table, and then one person collects all that money. And after the end of the year, you've raised hundreds and hundreds of euros, and you could actually build the project that you're talking about. So this concept spread throughout the world of this idea of drinking, talking, and responding. And now there are about close to 5,000 architects who drink on a regular basis and do something about it. So in Monterrey, Mexico, they were drinking, and then there was a massive flood. Hurricane Alex came up and destroyed the city in less than a day, completely wiped out. And suddenly, because they had been talking about helping, and there were 70 architects, they could walk into the minister's office and say, okay, we have 70 architects and engineers, we're ready to help, tell us what to do. And so they started in the rebuilding process, and they're currently rebuilding a town. In Pakistan, we had a team of architects, and when the flooding happened, They were already underway clearing out hundreds of homes and repairing hundreds of homes. And we actually got a phone call in my office in San Francisco thanking us for all the work we had done in Pakistan. We had no idea we were working in Pakistan. But these Drinking for Humanity architects just decided they weren't going to tell me because I'm not that important and the people are, and they should start building. And then they called me up and say, hey, we could do with some funds. So we helped fundraise for them. So our architects might misbehave, but they misbehave for good. And then there's inklings of a chapter in Barcelona. We don't know, but maybe at the end of this, there may well be one. So the one thing we do is we embed our construction professionals within communities. This is not a vacation. This is not something you do on a summer. If we have a project in a community, you live in the village or the town that you're rebuilding. It also means that our architects tend to be a little crazy. You know, this is Eric Cezal. He's leading our office in Port-au-Prince. This is his carry-on luggage. This is not his check-in. So any architect who can get 300 pounds of IV fluids in your overhead he's going to work for me. So the other thing to note is this guy may look crazy, but he has 3 master's degrees in architecture, construction management, and material science, and he can blowtorch like nobody I've seen. And there's a point when you're working in these communities where you're talking and designing and talking and designing, you've got to just shut up and start building. And many of our architects, they get frustrated with just talking about it, and they just put down their pencils and start building. So there's a moral urgency to a lot of the architects who work with us. And, you know, we're kind of like the United Colors of Benetton, right? Our architects are not just, you know, male, pale, and stale. They're not just old white men, which, you know, when you ask somebody what is an architect, that's what you think of. They're from all over the world. They're, you know, the technicolor of faith and background and nationality. And we always partner them with a local professional so we can see the construction process all the way through, and also with a community. And the architect's role is not only to design for this community, but to help construct with the community. And there's 2 things that is quite novel in our nonprofit. We pay the community to build their buildings. We pay our architects to build the buildings. Pro bono doesn't equal free. You are a professional. You spent 12 years, 15 years training to become an expert in something that less than 0.1% of the world can do. And so you need to value your professionality, and you need to give for it. Because if I get you to work on a project, it's not going to be something you give to your intern on Friday night because you're too busy to do. If I pay you, I've got you on contract, and you better treat it like a Monday morning project. Also, these communities have been affected by war, natural disaster, strife. And then to turn around and say, look, we're giving you a school, so you should work for free, is almost insulting. Because what people need is food so they can feed their kids and they can put them in school and so forth. So it's an important part of the process that we build locally so that can happen. And so that's about creating a sustainable construction. You can't really see this. It's got little round glasses, which means you're an architect. But you put the architect with some funding and you can create small business management. So it's about job creation through construction. Doing full construction documents. I'm sorry, these are blurry. We also believe in open sourcing everything. So every single project is under a Creative Commons license, which means that any organization can download and replicate that for free. I think that nonprofits who hold on to their best practices, you could say are criminally negligent, given the fact if you have an idea that could actually change the lives of someone else, and then your nonprofit says, well, I'm not willing to share because you have to work with me, you know, then why are you even existing? The whole idea is for social change, and so you should share equally. And to train and start small businesses. So it's the idea about not just training people to build the buildings, but to actually create business development opportunities and using microloans and micro-lending as a mechanism for that. And then we advocate for socially driven design, which means we've done a lot of books and TV and so forth, which sounds crazy, but it's interesting. You know, the architectural industry has got a little, you know, critical of the fact that we've done TV, and we go on crazy TV and do, you know, I did a Japanese game show. I have no problem with that, you know, and the reason because of that is if I get an article in an architecture magazine, I'm preaching to the choir. But if I get it on a crazy Japanese show, 10 million people watch it every night for a week. So the idea is we need to not only talk about how to do socially driven design, but also convey to the general public the need for architects within this work. So I'm a strong advocate for that. So that's the boring bit. So if you were late, this was the bit I knew I was in Spain, so I did like 10 minutes of boring bit. So now we're going to talk about projects because they're exciting. This is a project we did after the tsunami. This was a community center. We had approximately $100,000 to build a school, a health clinic, and so forth. We had been building schools in Sri Lanka for about a year, and then the UN came up to us and they said, we're really confused. How comes you're getting so many schools built and we've yet to get one built? And we said, have you thought about involving the community? Have you talked to the community about doing the design? And they said, no, that's a really great idea. So we said, well, you should do that. And they said, no, why don't you do that for us? So we actually started working with the UN Habitat and others to create a coalition to rebuild a community. And we gave them their first ever licensed architect. And what's amazing about this, you see a very happy young woman she's a licensed architect from the UK, had done a little bit of work internationally. And the reason she's so happy is not because she got a job, but when she arrived in Sri Lanka, the UN staff had moved all into one office in the back, and they had given her her own office. And on the sign on the door, it said the word architect. And when she worked in a firm in London, she was known as the intern or the person who gets coffee. So there's a level of respect you get in doing this work that is profound, but you've got to live up to that respect. And so suddenly you are the architect of this community, which means you do full construction drawings and you work with the community. And this was a beautiful design. Natural ventilation, rainwater catchment, solar. It was a community center, a kindergarten, school, health clinic, library, computer room, organic gardens, a cricket pitch, very important, and then market stalls for about $100,000. And in the community meetings, Susie presented it to the community, and they hated it. They said it sucked. And the reason it sucked, even though it was in budget, even though it was innovative, was that the idea of cultural sustainability. When we talk about sustainability, we focus on materials and the environment. But the idea of cultural sustainability is as strong as anything. If the community can't feel like it's theirs, if they can't feel like they can own it, they won't maintain it. So if it's a building of the community, they will maintain that building. If it's some foreign object, they're not going to maintain it, and it'll just be an empty building in 2 years. So through design consultation, and then when we're working with schools, we actually have kids designing the building. And that seems very like, something you see on the news, like, isn't it sweet? We have kids design the building. But actually, that's a design strategy. Because in this community, these children will become parents. And when they're parents, they're going to tell their kids, if you mess up that building, you're going to get a hiding because I designed that building. So it's about generational sustainability and about storytelling. That when I was a kid, I designed this building. So you better step up and you better take care of this building. So we know that for the next generation, that building will be taken care of. So we did full construction documents. We started training, integrating rainwater catchment systems, integrating local artists and craftsmen in the design process. And then the one thing that you have to do in these communities is you have to know how to throw a party. When these guys open a building, it's not like in Barcelona, you have like all the politicians and then you have like the important, developer and they cut a ribbon and then they all walk away. When the community opens a building, they party for days. And I have to tell you, you can tell by my accent, I'm British. And I had to overcome a great fear because being an Englishman, we genetically can't dance. So I had to learn how to dance. And right now we're doing a lot of work in Latin America, which makes it very hard for me. I was just starting a project in Argentina. And my hips don't move the way Argentinian hips move. So, it's very important if the community wants to accept you, is to understand the culture and be part of it. Two things happen. The community has changed. They own the building, but also the architect has changed. They come back with a profound look on life. What design does when it changes lives. And not one of these architects ever returned back the same. And so for us, we know it's a success when that architect infuses that community process in their new job. Now, this building was a finalist for the Aga Khan Award this year. And so what was nice about that, we didn't win. I was even surprised we were nominated. But what was nice is with the Aga Khan Award is they go back 4 years afterwards and they do post-occupancy analysis. We usually do a 1-year post-occupancy analysis to see how the building's done. And the building was full and being used the way it was supposed to, and they had actually added stuff onto the building, but this complex is on operation. So that was a really expensive building for us, $100,000. This is a cheap building, or inexpensive. This was $200, so 180 euros maybe. This is a house for a man who lives between two buildings. So our local chapter in Bangladesh were walking along the street, and they met this man who sells tea on the street. And they started having a conversation with him, and he said, my biggest concern is I live between two buildings, about 18 inches, which is about this wide, and 30 feet deep. He's been living there for over 10 years, and he even has had children in this alleyway. And he says, what happens late at night is that when someone comes into the alleyway, I'm going to protect my children. So I lose all my earnings for that day because naturally I'm going to protect my family. If I can just put a door and lock the alleyway, then I can have a safe space to live. And of course, architects, they geek out, they go crazy, they're super nerds. And they said, no, a gate is not enough. We want to design the whole tea setup. We want to design a little balcony space and then integrate greenery and blah, blah, blah. And all for a budget of 200. But of course, our architects also said, we could save $50 by doing it ourselves. So they also became the builders with him, and they built this little gate system you can see in operation. So 6 months later, the tea seller calls them on his mobile, and he says, I want to hire you again. So how do you know a project's been a success? When a man who makes less than 25 cents a day calls you and says he wants to hire you again. And of course, he can't pay, but he just wants more design help. And so he says, I have a novel idea. I want to expand my business. I want a mobile tea shop. So I can go into the business part of Dhaka and I can charge for tea. And everyone will line up and they get tea. And he said to them, you guys have been talking about solar. Like, I need solar panels. And the architects are like, yes, this is great. We can put the solar panels on and that will heat the water to make the tea. And the tea seller says, are you guys idiots? I know how to make tea. I know how to make tea. What I want the solar panel for is I want to put it to a cell phone charger. And so while people are waiting for their tea, I can charge them a few rupees for charging a cell phone. So sometimes your client is the expert. They understand the need and they understand the possibilities. So the architects, it took me a while to get this out of them that actually he came up with the idea. But, you can see he's selling his tea and you can plug in your cell phone and iPhone, whatever. We've done a lot of projects on sports for social change. Have I really just got half an hour left? Wow, this is going to be fun. Okay. We've been working a lot with utilizing sports as a mechanism to change communities, for them to become an anchor. And we did a small project in South Africa in a place where there was a very high rate of HIV/AIDS in women. And we started a small football field for women, where the doctors were also the coaches of the team. And so if you wanted to play on the team, you had to get healthcare and HIV/AIDS awareness messaging. And this project cost us about 20,000 euros. We won the Index Award for it, and then we used the money from the Index Award to build the project. So you have to be cunning with funding. So we built this project, very simple. It was built in about 6 months. And then this organization based in Europe, in Zurich, phoned us up. They're called FIFA. And they said, we're working in Africa, and we would like to do some youth facilities all over Africa, and we want to model it on this project you did in South Africa. And could you come to Zurich to do this project? And so we went to Zurich, and we met up with Street Football World, which does the programming, and we said we would do this. So then we get a phone call from this company in Oregon called Nike, and they say, we love this project you did in South Africa to do sports and architecture. Could you do some projects around the world that can affect change through sports? So suddenly a small $20,000 project that we did it because of the girls in this thing, led to over $2 million of design and construction work with both FIFA and Nike. And you can see this is Kailisha Football for Hope Center we did with ARG Design. You can see the community design process, full construction documents, very low-cost building, the integrated solar, and this was opened before the World Cup, and we had all these, superstars come and play. They didn't win. And then this is a project we did with Nike. We did this in the Favelas. So I live in the United States, and I've lived in the United States for about 12 years. And we tend in the United States to be what's the polite term? Military reactive society. And we tend to use this term preemptive strike a lot, these politicians. We need to go and blow the crap out of this country before they have a cup of tea. This is a sense. So, of course, it's very disturbing. And but I began to think about this idea, which is, how do you tackle violence? Do you wait till the violence happens, or do you be preemptive? Do you do a preemptive strike through community-based facilities? And we had a discussion with a group in Santa Cruz, in Rio, and they said, we're a low-density favela, and we know because of urban planning strategies that in the next 5 years we'll become high-density. And right now, Alice, who was explaining up here, says we have militia that have they're like the mob, they have a militia that basically charge money for security. And this is the first sign of organized crime that comes in. Because the second wave is drug dealing and machine guns, and it gets worse and worse and worse. So we know in 5 years there's going to be drug dealers and machine guns, right? So rather than waiting 5 years to be asked to help when it's absolutely a nightmare to work in, could you be preemptive in your design solution? Could you create an anchor in the community that would prevent it? So that's one. Two, how do you stop a drug dealer? Don't think like a bureaucrat, think like a drug dealer. Talk to drug dealers. So we talked to some drug dealers and we asked them how they set up their operation, and if they were going to set up their operation, how would they do it? So if you're a drug dealer, this is a nice empty square. This is a boulevard between two highways. For those in the back, just imagine it. And there's a big green public square. And the idea is you would put two kids, 12-year-olds, on the front corners. You'd come, you pay the kids the money, you drive around, you pick up the drugs from inside one of the houses along the back, you come around and you keep going down the boulevard. So this would be the center of drug distribution in this area. So this is where we're going to build. Because fuck them, right? Being an architect doesn't mean you have to be like, fluffy bunnies and puppies and all that sort of stuff. You have to be as strong as those you're trying to attack. So that's where you put the facility, and that's where you work with the community, because the community is not looking for someone to negotiate peace. They're looking for someone to hit a hammer down and say, this is where we're going to do this project. And not just do some little design, but this is the design of a little five-a-side football pitch. These are the stands. This is a community facility inside, some health clinics. And this is a little place to sit with a tree growing through it. I have no idea why, but there's a tree growing through it. The architects love it. And then on the other side, you have performances and an open space. We did this with a design competition. We asked anybody if they could upload ideas within a month. At the end, the community picked the one they liked. And then we started the design process, and Daniel Feldman from Colombia was the architect on the job who saw the project through. Thorsten and Nanda were the design architects. And then we did not only working with the communities, but the way you present. So instead of printing off an AO drawing of your plans, you use sports chalk to do it at 1-to-1 scale on the pitch, and then people can walk the building. And then instead of trying to communicate through flyers to people about what's happening with the building and the process, Daniel Feldman went to the radio station and he asked to have a half-hour show where he plays music and he talks about the architecture of the building. And you can call in, you can either request songs or you can ask about the building. So for a year, he was a DJ, and that's how he was able to work with the community. So this is the building going up. What I love about these photos is when I was with the community, I spent a lot of time talking with the community who live around it. And we ended up hiring a lot of the people who lived around this building. And they say, I think your contractor is ripping you off. I think he's stealing money from you. So what do you mean? Your building is crooked. It's like, he's built it wrong. I think he's a little loco. And I was like, no. This is the way the building's supposed to be. And then we presented it to our Brazilian engineers. And they looked at the design and they said, oh my God. I said, what do you mean? He goes, do you see this, what you did? And I said, yeah, it goes up and you can stand up here and look at the pitch and you can sit back. And he goes, do you want us to design this, engineer it to Western standards or Brazilian standards? And I said, what's the difference? He's like, this is in the heart of the favela. It's an open building. The first night this building opens, 1,000 people will be standing on here. A DJ will be right here, and there will be a party all night. So would you like me to engineer this for 1,200 people on the roof? And that's why you see why it's so thick. So he said, absolutely. It's supposed to be a place for a party. There was something called the Homeless World Cup that was in the Copacabana, and we recycled some of the pitches that were there, and we put them down, and we put them on here. This is one of our partners, and this is the building complete. My favorite photo of this building is this. This is architecture. What is not architecture is empty buildings and empty piazzas. For some reason, architects go on holiday and they get up early in the morning to take pictures with nobody in it. They're like, I should get up at 3 o'clock tomorrow because the garbage guy was there and I need to have a perfect shot with the light coming in. An empty building is not architecture. Architecture is when people inhabit your building, even stray dogs. So he's my favorite. We've done social ventures that are connected to it. This is very simply, we worked with the Brazil national shirt, which is a PET, and they said we have a few offcuts. And so we worked with a homeless group to give them the offcuts, and we created this crazy Rasta wig. And so they sell the Rasta wigs at the Brazil games, and that means that the entire jersey is cradle to cradle. So it's 100% recycled now for the Brazil jersey because we did the last 5%, which is these crazy things. And then the homeless people get all the offcuts, and then they sell it, and then that maintains the field. So the idea is starting a social business by utilizing the designers. And then that ramp, actually that ramp was not because it was cool. That ramp leads into phase 2 of the building, which is a $250,000 community facility that has a large school, a health clinic, and small business development and economic engines in the building. And our little ramp acted as a signal to other companies that this is where you invest. And right now, 2 companies are investing $250,000 in this community because their workers come from that community. So the idea that architecture could become a catalyst for investment in communities. At the beginning of the lecture, you saw Skaterstan. We got asked to do a skateboard park in Kabul, Afghanistan. It sounds crazy, but a couple of years ago, some Afghan kids started getting skateboards and skating the streets of Kabul. And the reason they did that is not only because it was a cool sport, but they wanted to show other kids in the neighborhood that this was a safe street. And they were going to own the street by street. And if there's kids skating on there, it means that nobody's getting killed on there. So the idea is you could spend billions of dollars on weaponry and so forth, but you get a kid on a skateboard, it's a signal there's safety. So we said, let's support them and help them have a center and train folks up. And we were able to invest some money in the skateboard park, and you can see that there. This is Mexico. I don't think I got time for this one, but I'll go through quickly. The movie's going to be, there's going to be a movie on this coming out, and I'm just going to skip that because you're going to miss it. So understand the problem. So this is in rural Kenya, and people say, you know, girls don't go to school, and people don't go to school because there's not enough resources. Why are girls not in school? The root of the problem has not got to do with the lack of teachers or the lack of books or some, you know, tribal thing. Guess what happens to girls once they reach about 11 or 12? They need safe and clean sanitation spaces. They need clean bathrooms, and they need clean water. And so, you know, the idea is if you can have clean water in a building, it doubles the number of girls in school all the way through. And for every year that a girl is in school in this country, adds 5 years to her life expectancy. So even if you meet the most sexist minister, you could make an economic case that keeping these girls alive by saying, look, more girls in school means that they live longer, which means that your country will have a stronger economy. That sounds good to me. So we decided we had some money to build a basketball court, and we decided we would collect enough rainwater for 1,200 kids. Just to note, this place had not rained in 3 years, sorry. In Mahiga, it hadn't rained in 3 years. There was starvation, cattle were dying, and so forth. We picked an architect who's 6'7", has a huge beard. His name's Greg. And he went over to Mahiga. It was his first time in Kenya. The day he arrived in the village to be introduced as our representative, it rained. So you imagine the village is there. They come to meet Greg, this big guy with a beard. It starts raining. He was loved by everybody. He got free accommodation in the church, and we started building the building. So
come straight down to the first tank. The second half of the roof.
I will show a little bit of this.
The full 2 feet. 2 drops what? So this drops down to the roof line and into the second tank. Hey, how you doing, man? You can see the concept, the yellow, you know, everything yellow is water, so any component with water is yellow. Again, these are the same tank from outside, and this 1,000-liter storage is for completely clean and pure drinking water.
Is this the first time they've ever dribbled on concrete, huh?
Yeah. So now hopefully we get a backboard up.
15 months, then it comes down to 2 hours to put up a backboard. What's he doing?
Grinding right into the court with the grinder. It's like, well, now we can chip that up and redo that again. If we can't drill holes the right size, use the bolts that work, and let's keep moving.
So, a long story short, I don't want to show you the rest of the video, but I'll just tell you the story. The day they opened this building, they did play the first game, it poured with rain. And they collected enough water in 1 hour for clean water for the entire village for 4 months. So, you know, I didn't inspect the drawings, and apparently we had over-engineered the whole water thing, and we doubled everything. And so we ended up collecting enough water for not just the school, but the entire village. So it got renamed the House of Water for the village of Mahiga, and anyone from the village can get clean water. So nice little story there. So you can see we've done a lot of these. Okay, how long have I got? Okay, I have 10 minutes. Okay, I have a choice. We can either do a thing on open source architecture and how to improve the lives of 5 billion people, or we can do a thing on Haiti and what's happening in Haiti, or we can do both and be 10 minutes late. So hands up who wants to do open source architecture? Hands up who wants to do Haiti? Hands up who wants to do both? Okay. Yeah, so you have to understand I'm English, and the timing thing, I can't help it. Like, you guys, you don't have watches. Yeah. It's too much for me. I need more coffee. Okay, so we have about 1 billion people that are living in absolute poverty. This is 1 billion people, 1 in 7 people on the planet. This year, 2011, is a very important year. 7 billion people will live on this planet this year, 7 billion. When 1 in 7 live in absolute poverty. These are the people you see on TV, on CNN, and so forth, and Fox or whatever. Please don't watch Fox. And any other news channel that you're watching. And if something happens to them, they really lose everything. In the next 10 years, 2 billion people will get electricity. So you question yourselves, how should they get electricity? The way we get electricity? Or using solar, rain, renewable systems? Maybe the real place you should be investing your renewable energy systems is not in Santa Monica or in Barcelona, but maybe in the favelas or in the slums, because there's 2 billion clients. There are 4 billion people that consider themselves as emerging middle class. Now, I grew up in a really poor neighborhood. Now I can look back and I know that it's a poor neighborhood. But it's interesting, when you grow up in a poor neighborhood and someone comes to your house and they say, do you consider yourself living under the poverty line? You say, no, but my neighbor, he's poor. He's definitely poor. And they're poor over there, but we are fine. Nobody identifies themselves as poor. So this idea of emerging middle class is a very optimistic thing. And 4 billion people think that they're emerging. They think they're going to push, which means they're willing to fight for it. And what happens is when they have a little bit of money, a couple of euros every day, they spend it on healthcare for their family, school for their kids, or improving their living conditions, which means there is a multi-billion-dollar industry in improving housing. We're just not looking at it. So the question is, would you want 40 clients in Barcelona, none of which respect you, or do you want 4 billion clients who love you? I think that's a yes. So 1 in 7 people live in slums and favelas. In the next 20 years, it's going to be 1 in 3. So what do we do about this? So for those of you who are not architects, I'm going to take you through the architecture process in 2 minutes. This is a developer, he has a tie. This is a builder, he has a hat. This is an architect, he has round glasses, and this is the occupant, he's just gray. So in the typical scenario of building, you have a developer. The developer has a lot of money. They hire an architect who's very prestigious, who has nice glasses. And then they get a builder, a contractor who's going to work with them. They start this relationship. And this can be an individual, a company, the government, whoever. Then they give money to the architect to create a vision for them. And then they develop a contract and they start giving money to the contractor. And then the architect and the builder have a conversation talking about how to implement the building. Then they have to tell the developer that it's going to cost twice as much because the builder doesn't know what they're doing and we have to get some subcontractors. And then the developer says, okay, I'll give you some more money and some more. But then there's some arguments between the architect and the builder because the builder thinks that the architect is arrogant and doesn't know what he's doing, and the architect thinks the builder is stealing and doesn't know what he's doing, is never on the job site. And so that costs more money. And then there's confusion between the architect and the developer because the builder has now put the thought in the developer's head that the architect doesn't know what they're doing, so now he's questioning whether they got the right architect and maybe they should replace him or not, or her. And now the architect is pissed off, so he starts arguing with the builder because he's told the developer that he said he was no good, but he actually knows what he's doing, and the developer and the builder are not reading the drawings properly. And so now the developer is arguing with the builder, and then they end up with this, which is a $600 million building that's $200 million over budget. So what's the good side in this scenario? Only 5% of the world work like this. Only 5% of the world hire architects. 5%. And that's including the West. 5% here, 5% in America. So what happens with the other 95% of the world who don't even know what architects do? So you have the occupant, the gray one. And they go to the builder. And it doesn't matter if you're in India or China, they just tell the builder they need a house. And the builder doesn't care. They just know how to build a house, so it doesn't matter where the site is. They'll just build the same house again and again and again because they're getting paid to build the house. So a couple of years ago, we won the TED Prize, which is it's like a conference, the TED conference, and they give out an award. And so we got the TED Prize, and I didn't know what it was. Some of you are looking at me like I'm an idiot, but I didn't know what it was. And so they said, you win $100,000. And I said, fantastic, I take cash. You just deliver it to my house. And they said, no, you don't get to keep the money. I said, what sort of prize is this? Is this like some financial investment prize? Are you going to put it in like derivatives or like, what is this? They said, no, the $100,000 is for the prize. The prize is you get to wish for anything you want in the world and we will make it happen. So originally my wish was for a giant jacuzzi with the bubbles all equal sized. Apparently that wasn't humanitarian, it was for me. I said, well, what if we could create a system where the builder can connect with architects all over the world and they can work collaboratively, globally, sharing details and ideas so that we can create better housing and schools and health clinics for the betterment of society. And the builder has access to thousands of design ideas that they can replicate for the betterment of the community. So in 6 months, we built something called the Open Architecture Network, which is the world's first open source architecture and construction site, as a place that you can only find, manage, and share solutions. So you can actually project manage on the site how to build a building. And every single one of our buildings is project managed this way. And just to give you an idea, we have no FedEx bills. We used to have FedEx bills. We don't do anything unless it's digital right now. Right now, it's growing rapidly. There's now 6,100 projects. There's 30,000 professionals on it, and we've done open source competitions, and it's been going for 4 years. And they're from the sublime to the ridiculous. So straw bale housing to mobile medical clinics in Africa to, well, you're getting a lot of play, Nathaniel. Sorry. This is straw bale housing on the Native American reservations, another one of Nathaniel's. This is a cool project in China done by one of our Chinese chapters, which is this bridge in China. It's a bridge school, a school that bridges. Low-cost housing on the Gulf Coast. My personal favorite. For those at the back, you won't see this, but it's at the bottom. I'll have to describe it to you. So, you're in the Kenya-Sudanese border. And for those people who are my students who are doing the project on the Sudan-Kenya border with me, I didn't want to show this to you, but this is a project where you're working. You have a village that needs a doctor, and the doctor is in the village for a week, and he's treating everybody. And at the end of the week, they wrap up the tensile structure, and they put it on the back of a camel, and then they put the solar panel on the camel, then they whack the camel on the rear, and the camel walks to the next village. And when the camel gets to the next village, it's generated enough electricity to run the clinic in the next village. It's a camel-powered clinic. So what's amazing about this? There are 6 of them right now in operation on the Sudan border, but more importantly, it was designed by a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old. So how is today's society different? You don't have to wait until you're Frank Gehry's age to do something that's going to change the world. You can be 19 or 20 years old with a great idea, and if it's for the betterment of humanity, you need to get it built. And there are ways to do that. Just a little controversial. These are all in Mexico, which I love. I have a thing for Mexico right now. But this one, the network, it's neutral. Anybody can put anything on there. And this is a shelter for, it's somewhere between the United States and Mexico. Let's just say that. Somewhere between Arizona and the border. And it's a place where people who are crossing the border can get shelter so they don't get shot at by crazy Americans, and they can get some food and water and come across. So whether you agree or disagree with American immigration policy, somebody in the middle of the night, 2 architects erected this shelter so Mexican immigrants can do this. So we've now put it on an iPad, and what we're doing right now is there's something called FICA, which is a legal document, which is called the Federal Information Commitment Act, which means that anything that's paid for by U.S. taxpayers should be in the public knowledge. And if the government is using any money in the public knowledge, then you have the right to sue the government for access to that. And so this year we're in the process of issuing a series of these suits against the US government for access to all their projects globally, so that we can find out how much they're spending on all the international aid and ways that we can make it more efficient and we can review these projects. So it's a way to create transparency within the government on their construction projects. So you imagine, Spain does a new deal, they decide to rebuild a city, that you, the taxpayer, can find out how much they're paying and who's actually working on it. So, if it's like Halliburton or Bechtel, or if it's actually an architect and some local contractors. So I think there's a due diligence. So that's a little project we're doing. And let's get to Haiti. So somebody, thankfully, has brought me a double espresso. So I'm going to show a quick video and drink this, and then we'll talk about Haiti.
This city has been plunged into they have been through so much.
He believes the quake has taken hundreds of thousands of lives.
And millions of people out here with
as many
shelter,
people who are still
no
alive as
water, and
possible
no...
before they die from.
Contrast in the snow for the agony I'd rather know, 'cause blinded I am blindsided. Did you really rush out?
That video is not for you. I just want to describe, I was having a conversation with a guy from El País, and I told him this fact, and he just looked there as if like I had shot his dog. Like, he was just like, what? Our largest group of funders for Haiti are children, are high school children, between 13 and 18. And they're raising money by doing hot chocolate sales, washing cars, doing chores at home, and so forth, all over the world. And so Haiti changed not the way that we respond to rebuilding, but also the way we raise money. So all of the money is coming online, which means that we don't report with an annual report of where your money went. We do videos, and we do blogs, and we do live updates to all these thousands of kids all over the world, so they know what's happening with the funding. So we actually do weekly blogs, like a diary, and then monthly updates. And I'll show a little bit of the monthly update. So this is to give you a sense, 62% of the buildings in Port-au-Prince collapsed or in need of repair. 93% of the buildings in Léogâne. Léogâne is a place that no press go because it's too far away from the hotels and the bars and the restaurants for the press to go. But not all disasters are created equal. So if you're not under the spotlight, you don't get the attention. But you imagine a town completely wiped out. 50% of all schools in Haiti are gone, uninhabitable, need to be destroyed. So you know that there's issues on the ground. Right now, today, 1 million people are displaced. And the fact is, displaced doesn't mean that they have nowhere to go, because people aren't waiting for the rebuilding process. They're returning to schools they shouldn't be in. They're finding shelter so that they can get out of the rains. And they're fleeing to the foothills and up into the mountains to escape the rubble. And they find schools like this that turn from, this was a school that originally had 60 kids that now has 400 children in, because the children have escaped up into the mountains. So you understand the stresses of that. So you guys are not supposed to see this because you pay taxes and your money went to the EU, and the EU gave all this money to Haiti. So you're not allowed to see this because this is what's happening to your money. So about $2 billion was pledged. And what happens is that it goes into a big bank account. And this is all the pledges from the EU and elsewhere. And the big bank account then goes to the president of Haiti, which they don't have one right now, so nobody's looked at that bank. Once there's a president, him and representatives of large donor organizations, big aid, get to decide where that money goes. And they distribute that money to the parliament and the ministries, which means Minister of Education, Minister of so another level of politics. That then gets handed to approved contractors. Approved contractors are ones that have been given the green light. These tend not to be Haitian. They tend to be international for-profit contractors who've never worked there before, who then recontract that out to people locally, and they take their cut. And then those local people decide to hire the Haitians to do the building. So this process usually takes about 2 years between handing the money over and finally getting to the people. So when you say, why is it so slow? This is why it's so slow. So the question is, when you're an independent NGO that doesn't take money from the government and you work on the ground, you're kind of like a tugboat. I'm so happy to be in Barcelona because, you know, when I'm in landlocked countries, they don't understand what I'm saying. But, you know, you are a port city. So as a tugboat, you move fast, quick, you see what's happening, you understand what's the flow of the reconstruction. But when you work collaboratively with a lot of other tugboat NGOs, you're just as powerful of these large multinationals, and you can actually latch onto them. They're not enemies. They just have they're going to do A to B, and you can pull them towards a more community-focused reconstruction effort. So this is where we're working right now. We have a one-stop shop for architecture. Anyone can go in. There are architects and engineers here. They'll be here for the next 4 years. If you're an architect or engineer and you want to work in Haiti, we have a seat for you. There's AutoCAD, there's IV fluids. You're good. We're working mainly on schools, but there's a couple in Jacmel and Leogan. We just added a couple more dots to this week. And we have a blackboard, you know, a blackboard. And if your name goes on that blackboard, you're getting a house. Your name does not get off that blackboard until you get a house. It's a commitment we make. If you go on the board, you're getting a school, you're getting a clinic. And so making a visual commitment to the community, when other community members come in, they can see their friends, their family, and they say, okay, they're working with so-and-so, these guys are cool. So you begin to understand that using visualization is a way to ease the tension. You've seen this, the way we work. I have no time. So we do a Rebuilding 101 manual, which is a simple manual that shows you how to do basic building, seismic, safe building. It's done in English, French, Spanish, Creole. We're translating it into other languages. We're training the local staff to utilize this. We're training folks in the refugee camps. I just have to tell this little story. So I'm on the plane from Miami to Port-au-Prince, and I'm sitting there, and the guy next to me is reading our rebuilding manual. And the best way to get a compliment is just to not say who you are and just inquire. So I said, what is this? And he was like, this is great. This is a way to build in Haiti. It tells you all about the materials and the costing and so forth. And we downloaded it from the internet, and everybody's using it, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, who's it from? And he's like, I don't know, some crazy Architect for Humanity thing. I don't know who they are. And I said, oh. And then I said, well, I'm the founder of Architecture for Humanity, and this is ours. And he was like, it's super cool. And I was like, yeah. And I said, you going to Haiti for the first time? And he said, yes. And I said, who are you going on behalf of? Are you working for an NGO? And he says, not an NGO, but I'm here as a representative of the Vatican. And I was like, the Pope has my manual? I was like, the first thing I did is when I got into Port-au-Prince Airport, I texted the team. I was like, the Pope has our manual. But, you know, that's not exactly true. But, you know, you understand that having simple graphics allows kind of non-architects to understand the rebuilding process. So you can see we're doing billboards in Port-au-Prince. This is Bien, Haiti, which is rebuild Haiti. You call this number, you get an architect. It's a 1-800 architect number, okay? Anyone in Haiti calls up from the refugee camp and says, hey, my shelter is falling down. You say, okay, you need cross-bracing. This is the way you do it. So we have, we can service people 24 hours a day. You call up 3 in the morning, it's raining. We say, okay, you do this. So, and then we go into the camps and do training. This is going to get us in a lot of trouble. We've been doing reviews of the transitional shelters, of the 51 different NGOs doing transitional shelters in Haiti, what they cost. It turns out that they cost about $1,400 for a plastic sheet shelter, but you could actually repair a home for $1,800. So not to upset you, but the organization with the worst transitional shelters, the most expensive, was the Spanish Red Cross, so I'm sorry. But we've reviewed all of them. They're up on the internet, and anyone can download them and see. If you run a refugee camp, we give advice on which ones to go for. So if an NGO comes in with bad shelters, we say, it's too expensive, it's bad, they're going to fall, you should do these ones. So the idea is acting as a research analysis for this. Training, doing bid and tender training, building inspection, and then more importantly is jobs and starting jobs. So I was going to show a video. I'll just give a brief description. Again, we have kids raising money for us for the building of schools. And so there's a video on YouTube. There's a website called studentsrebuild.org, and this is all the kids. And so you can see the next video on there if you want to about what's happening and where we are. But we're working on a series of schools that integrate historic preservation as well as construction. This is Elie Dubois. This is an orphanage and a school in the corner. This is Séverine, which at the end I'll show you. We just finished construction on one of the blocks. École La Dignité in Jacmel. These are all schools in the process of construction right now. These are some of the ideas that are going to be incorporated into those schools. We're looking at larger community structures. This is a trade school to teach construction trades. This is a radio station. Oh, this is the youth radio station community center. This is the soccer pitch and community facility. And this was from this morning. We're working on our second block. I don't know why it did that. Even my laptop wants me to move on. Okay, so we've just completed our second school. We're about to go into construction on 4 more schools. And then in my organization, there's a red button, like a mental red button. If you see something that is adversely affecting the lives of another human being, and you wait for my permission to help, I will fire you. You're all on contract with me. I can fire you at will. If I see that you worked on a project and there's lives in danger and you didn't do anything, you're fired. That's the end of it. So and that sounds harsh, but the reality is the spirit is if you see something, do something. A couple of months ago, I was at a birthing center in a refugee camp in Port-au-Prince. This is the one that's on TV all the time, 60,000 people, Sean Penn, crazy, blah, blah, blah. Super cool camp. Everything's running smoothly, except for one thing, where women give birth. So I went into the birthing center, and it's a plastic tent that's about the size of this area, this part here. And there were 8 women on deck chairs giving birth, and 1 woman helping them. And I've seen the birth of a child in a normal hospital, and it's freaking scary. Like, even with all the drips and the this and the that and the doctors, and I want a 10-to-1 ratio, not an 8 women to 1 doctor ratio. And it was visually disturbing to me, and I didn't really think about it much afterwards, but then the rains came. So when those floods and the rains came to Haiti, I wasn't thinking about the people in the tents. I was thinking about the women in the birthing center. And I said to Eric, can you just go check on the birthing center? And he went, and he took some photos. This is the only photo I think you should see. because there was no floor and the water was rushing through there, and by now the deck chairs had become broken. Women do not wait to give birth because of the rain. So this is a life or death situation. And the idea is, if you're an architect, you have to design as if your own child's life depends on it. You have to design as if you are going to live in the house. If you design a house and you're not willing to put your mother, your sister, yourself in that home, then you shouldn't be working on this project. It's vital that you design with dignity and you do it in a way that you say, listen, I'm willing to live in this environment, so therefore these people can live in this environment. It shouldn't be, I feel sorry for them, blah, 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 so let's just do a tent. You have to move quickly. So Eric and the team connected with this group called Can Do, these crazy builders. We ran through the refugee camp. We tried to find anybody who had construction skills, and we said, listen, these women are going to die unless we put them in a clinic. Who wants to join us? What I love about this photo is there's not a single pasty person like me in this photo. It's all Haitians from the camps who people call victims, who said, we got to build this. And in less than a week, they built the clinic and it was operational. But then a couple of months later, there was these floods. Remember there was a big flood in Haiti and 6,000 tents collapsed? It was in this camp. And the next day, our team went to the camp, and this was the staff quarters. And the funniest, I mean, it's funny in hindsight, but the funniest comment was made. It's raining at 2 in the morning. Buildings are collapsing. And someone screams out, we should go in the clinic that was designed by an architect. I have never heard that in my life. Someone's like, and they all rushed the clinic, and they all stayed in the clinic overnight, and it stayed up. And so, thankfully, as architects, we over-engineer everything, and it was enough to hold everybody in there. So this small little gesture actually helped save lives in the process. We're building housing, we're doing job creation, of course, open sourcing it. So just some last thoughts. So here's what I want to do. I'm 37. I'm going to hit 40 soon, and I got to figure out what I want to do next. I'm kidding, I'm still doing AFH. But this is architecture. This little sliver at the top, this is people who hire architects. And in this sliver, these are the star architects, and this is the rest of you guys, right? That's cool, we can have star architects, but let's understand that it's 0.01% of the entire planet. Here's me, social and humanitarian design. This is mine. You can't have this. This 20% of the world's mine. Back off. What I would like is that architects take on the other 3 billion people. So these are all for you. Any of you guys, you 3 billion people, they would love your help. And you can, or you can come work for me, that's fine. As you know, I pay. I know that there's not many people out of work in architecture in Barcelona right now. So, you know, it might be hard to find some Spanish architects who would like to spend 6 months or a year in the field. Jobs currently in Argentina, Chile, China, India. So collectively, we let the stars do their star architecture. We let the others do their others architecture. We do our social humanitarian architecture. And guess what? 7 billion people get good, well-built buildings for the betterment of society. And we do that by integrating the culture in the process, being the tugboat, and to understand that a strong society creates a strong economy. The biggest problem we had in India and Rwanda in the last few years is not it's hard to work there. It's not that there's not skilled labor. It's because the frickin' dollar and the euro crashed, and I lost 20% of my currency exchange because the West sucks. And places like India and Rwanda has a robust economy, and their currency was stable. So it's this irony. I had to explain to donors, like, we lost 20% of our funding because the dollar sucks. So, you know, to understand that a strong society that's built in a way creates a strong economy. To understand that your client is your design expert, and then when you listen to your client, amazing heroes emerge from that. I don't need to say this in Barcelona because this is one of the cities. This is not Las Vegas, that we should build communities and not destinations. If Barcelona becomes a city of unique buildings, it is no longer Barcelona. So to understand that it's our job to create woven fabric. And then at the end of it, did I say something about the Bush administration? I haven't said anything about WikiLeaks yet. I'm just a little worried. So don't mistake me. If you work for me, I'm going to work you like a dog. You think working for Rem Koolhaas or Jean Nouvel is going to be hard? I'm going to stick you where there's no electricity, no water, you're going to live in a tent, and you better get the damn building built. And at the end of it, if the building's successful, the community feels it's their building and not yours, and they forget to thank you. But there's this moment, this really bizarre moment, and you don't know when it's going to happen, but you're doing a project, and this client turns around and throws her arms around you and starts sobbing and won't let go and thanks you for actually doing something. And it's that moment that is the most highly addictive moment of being an architect, because you suddenly realize that you did something that will change the lives of that family forever. And it could be that family, it could be that town, it could be that village. And that simple gesture that you did, the 6 months you took off work, could profoundly change the future of that community. And that's why people work with us. So this is our mantra. Follow your heart, break the rules, and get it frickin' built. And above all, design like you give a damn. Thank you very much.